Good morning, class. Welcome to another day of Read Aloud. So yesterday we just saw Buck kind of answer the call of the wild for the first time, and he ran and went off with this wolf, and they were going on an adventure together, and they were going to go somewhere that the wolf was showing Buck. But then Buck remembered John Thornton, and so he came back to the camp. Okay? So now, chapter 14 is Into the Wilds. Buck began to sleep out at night, staying away from camp for days at a time. Once he crossed the mountain and went down into the land of timber and streams. There he wandered for a week looking for his wild brother. He fished for salmon and hunted for his food. He killed only to eat, and he was quick, smart, and crafty. No prey was too swift for him, bird, rabbit, or beaver. But by the stream he killed a large black bear that was blinded by the mosquitoes. The bear had raged through the forest with Buck at his heels. It was a hard fight, but Buck took the bear down. He was a master in the wilds. Buck could rely on his own strength and power. His pride showed in the way that he carried himself in every muscle. He looked like a gigantic wolf, and he was cunning like a wolf. Yet he had the intelligence of his shepherd mother and his St. Bernard father, and this made him one of the fiercest creatures to roam the wild. Every part of him was aware of the sounds and smells and sights around him. He could think faster than any dog and hunt as well as any wild wolf. Even the men noticed that Buck was special. "Never there was such dog," said John Thornton one day, as they watched Buck march out of camp. "When he was made, the mold was broke," said Pete. "I think so myself," Hans affirmed. They saw Buck marching out of camp, but they did not see the instant and terrible change that took place as soon as he was in the forest. There he became a thing of the wilds, stealing along softly, cat-footed, like a passing shadow. As the fall of the year came on, the moose herds began to appear. Buck came upon a band of 20 moose one day at the creek. Their chief was a great bull moose, standing over 6 feet from the ground. Buck watched the bull moose. Here was a challenge. Back and forth the bull tossed his great antlers. His small eyes glared as he roared with fury at the sight of Buck. A feathered arrow was sticking out of the bull's side. He was wounded, and Buck took note of this. Buck followed the bull moose and cut him off from the others. Buck barked and danced about in front of the bull, just out of reach of the great antlers and terrible hoofs. The bull was driven into a rage. He charged at Buck, but the crafty dog backed away, toying with the great animal. Buck was patient. For half a day he kept at the wounded bull. He attacked from all sides, keeping the moose from rejoining the others. The herd tried to help their leader from time to time, but they soon tired of the fierce dog. As night came, the weary old bull stood with his head lowered. He watched the other moose as they went off in search of food. He could not follow. The fanged dog would not let him go. He was a grand animal and had lived a long, strong life. At the end, he faced death at the teeth of another grand animal, a new king. From then on, night and day, Buck never left the moose. He would not let him eat. He would not let him drink. Buck kept at him, nipping at his legs, waiting for the great bull moose to grow weaker and weaker. At last, at the end of the 4th day, he pulled the great moose down. For a day and a night he remained by the kill, eating and sleeping. Then he turned his face toward camp and John Thornton. As he set out the path for home, you could feel a new stir in the land. He knew, not by sight or sound or smell, but by some other sense, that new life was coming into the land. The birds talked of it, the squirrels chattered about it, the very breeze whispered of it. Several times he stopped and drew in the fresh morning air in great sniffs. He read a message which made him leap on with greater speed. He now felt a sense of dread, and as he dropped down into the valley toward camp, he proceeded with great caution. 3 miles away, he came upon a fresh trail that sent his neck hair bristling. It led straight toward camp and John Thornton. Buck hurried on swiftly with every nerve tense, alert to the details which told a story. All but the end. He noticed the silence of the forest, as if all life was in hiding. As Buck slid along like a shadow, his nose picked up a scent that pulled him toward a thicket. There he found Night, the dog. He was lying on his side, dead, with a feathered arrow through his body. From the camp came a faint sound of many voices, rising and falling in a sing-song chant. Bellying forward to the edge of the clearing, he found Hans lying on his face, feathered with arrows. Then Buck peered through the trees and saw what made his hair leap straight up on his neck and shoulders. Rage swept over him. He did not know that he growled so loudly. His reason left him, and his great love for John Thornton made him react without thinking. The Yee-Hats were dancing about the camp's fire when they heard a fearful roaring and saw rushing upon them an animal, a strange and fierce animal they had never seen before. It was Buck, a live hurricane of fury, hurling himself upon them in a frenzy to destroy. He sprang at the closest man, the chief of the Yee-Hats, grabbing his throat. He did not pause, but leaped upon a second man. He plunged so quickly that every arrow missed him. In fact, the surprised Indians were so close together and so frantic that they shot one another with the arrows. Then a panic seized the Yehats, and they fled in terror to the woods, yelling as they fled that the evil spirit had come. And truly, Buck was the evil spirit raging at their heels and dragging them down like deer as they raced through the trees. It was a fateful day for the Yehats. They scattered, and it was not till a week later that the last of the survivors gathered together in a lower valley and counted their losses. Buck, weary of the chase, returned to the empty camp. He found Pete dead in his blankets. Thornton's own struggle was fresh written on the earth, and Buck scented every detail of it down to the edge of the pool. By the water's edge lay Skeet, faithful to the end. The pool was muddy, and Buck could not see what it contained, but he knew that it contained John Thornton, for Buck followed his trace into the water. No trace led away. All day, Buck brooded by the pool or roamed about the camp. Buck knew death, and he knew John Thornton was dead. It left him empty. He ached, and nothing could fill this emptiness. At times, when he paused at the body of the Yehats, he forgot his pain. He was aware of a great pride in himself. He had killed man, and he had killed in the face of the law of club and fang. Never again would he fear this animal. And that is chapter 14.